Miami remained unbeaten. Oh, more controversy? What did you guys think?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. There were a lot of good games we're going to get into, Kenton, from Week 8, including the Hokies reminding us they're still here, and we got to take them seriously. Duke gave Florida State their 6th loss, and it's mid-October. Woo! Now, Miami against Louisville, Kenton, was a shootout, as I thought it might be. They nearly combined for 100 points in Miami's 52-45 win at Louisville. Defense optional on both sides. That's been a big problem for Miami. Louisville didn't really have any answers for Cam Ward and Damian Martinez and company, but there was another play, another review that went Miami's way that has been melting down the internet. And Kent, like, to a certain extent, I could understand the previous meltdowns, right? Because there were closer calls, and at the end of games, the Hail Mary against Virginia Tech, the non-targeting, was it targeting against Cal? But this one, so Cam Ward hit as he throws, but they actually on the field, and ACC officials, they're a little confused. They allowed a play to continue after it came out of Ward's hands. It was picked up and presumably returned for a touchdown. But even watching the play live, I'm thinking, well, that's clearly a forward pass incomplete. They go over the replay. In my humble opinion, clearly a forward pass incomplete. Even the commentators, who don't always, agree with the calls that go Miami's way, thought that was a pretty routine forward pass. They were going to rule back the touchdown. They did overrule the touchdown. Was not the final play of the game, but Miami did end up winning the game by 7 points. And, lo and behold, people are like, what did you think, Kenton? Because, people are going to call me biased about it.
Right.
You have no bias towards Miami. What did you think about that play?
I said on Twitter that this was the most clear of the now 3 controversial calls that Miami were involved with, right? If I had to rank them from least obvious to most obvious, I'd say the targeting was the one where, like, depending on the angle, depending on what you root for, depending on your interpretation of the rule, does or does not go. The Virginia Tech one, the ambiguity around that rule, it's like leaves a little gray area, but you did see movement with the ball. You did see the player out. It's iffy, right? It's iffy on that one. This one, to me, by the letter of the rule, it is clear. And I am a defender saying this. I am a guy who likes Louisville a lot more than most people in Raleigh do. I specifically said coming into the season, Louisville's getting disrespected. How are they picked to finish second in the conference, and yet nobody's picking them to win it outright? I am telling you right now, if you could tell me, hey, Ken, I'm going to give you the power. You're the new Jordan Von Strangle of football rules. You get to rewrite it. That's a Fairly Odd Parents reference for those of you who are a little too old to catch it.
Right over my head.
But anywho, if you told me, Kenton, you have a magic wand, you can rewrite the game in your image so that it captures more of the essence of football, then yes, that would have been ruled a fumble by the essence of football, because that was somebody making a play, not like, oh, he's at the top of his release and it just happens to get pushed forward. However, the rule as it's stated is if the hand starts any passing motion forward, until that motion is completed, if at any point in time he's hit and the ball comes out, it is automatically ruled a incomplete pass if it hits the ground. That's the way the rule is written. Is it one of the plethora of rules that favors offense? Yes, but that's just the rule. I didn't make it up. Don't take it up with me. I'm telling you, don't take it up with Dono and say, oh, you're seeing it with your orange and green glasses on. That is objectively the way the rule is written. And if you watch that play, for those of you who have the ability and capability, watch that play on YouTube. Go to it and watch it on a desktop preferably, because desktops allow you to get 0.25 speed. Go to 0.25 speed.
I didn't know that.
And watch it frame by frame. You will see that for just a tinge, his arm goes forward with control of the ball. Now, for the majority of the motion, it was out of his control, but the rule is written in a way that it's not about whether or not you're 50% through the motion, whether or not you would release a ball back here. It's about, did the arm move forward at all? And per the rule, it's an incomplete pass. I don't know why this one is controversial at all.
Yeah, I think it's honestly, it's just because, here's another review that goes Miami. I think that's all it is. I think that it's like, if this one had happened 3 weeks ago, I don't think anyone would have even raised an eyebrow. It's just the fact that, Miami has been fairly or unfairly, I think in this case, certainly fairly, on the receiving end of positive rulings. I think that's what it is. We have a lot more games we're going to talk about here. We will talk about the new Associated Press rankings. Can Pittsburgh get a little respect here? Can we get some respect? We're also, later on in this episode, we're going to bring in Isaac Shade, who's not only from Locked On Tar Heels, but he's also from Locked On College Basketball. Because, Locked On College Basketball, yes, because we've got to talk about the shocking, maybe not so shocking now that we've heard more about it, retirement of Tony Bennett, the Virginia basketball coach. Isaac is going to help us break down the reasons why, because Bennett has come out and clarified. Isaac is going to help break that one down. Kenton, and, obviously, I do, I watch Miami games with orange and green colored glasses on, but on the flip side, I will admit that for as brilliant as Miami's offense is, best in the country, statistically, that defense, they've been problematic. And, the rest of Miami's games look winnable on paper, but if you do reach the ACC championship game, and Clemson's probably on the other side of that, and if you do make it to the college football playoff, if they can't fix that defensive secondary, it's going to be a real problem for Miami. And, Miami coming up this weekend, Kenton, they've got Florida State, and Florida State made history this past weekend, losing to Duke for the first time ever. They were 22-0 in football against the Duke Blue Devils, 22-1 now, as Manny Diaz's guys, playing ferocious defense, had a pick six in the game. Brock Glenn had somehow, the Florida State quarterback, had 3 turnovers in 3 consecutive plays. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And the Seminoles are now looking for answers, Kenton. I mean, what did you make of that on Friday night?
DJU is chilling back, smoking the stogie, saying, looks like I wasn't the problem, man. That's unfortunate what you boys got going on. Y'all be safe. I've already got my NIL bag. I'm out. But in all seriousness, I look at this as a moment where, this is a factual statement. Before Saturday night, if you would have said Duke beat Florida State, that is a factual statement. You would have had to have been talking about basketball with Coach K and company, women's basketball with their coaches, all the good things they're doing over there, one of the country club sports. Okay. You would have had to talk about an Olympic sport. Never in the history of Florida State nor Duke have these two teams ever combined to have this happen. And yet, you and I both knew this was going to happen. You and I both predicted.
I'll be honest. I thought Florida State would win the game, so I'll take myself. Or maybe I was jinxing them. I don't know. But I
who knows? But you heard what I said when you asked me about this thing. Yeah, I said Jordan Travis ain't walking through the door. He was giving them boys the blues, and he's not walking through the door. And Lord forbid if it wasn't the quarterback play that held Florida State back once again. And I told everybody when everybody said, "Oh, Brock Glenn looks so much better than DJU." I said Norvell has won the equity to not have to play a quarterback just because they paid him money. He knows something that we don't. You saw what I saw out there. So it's not a DJU problem. It is really legitimately a culture problem at Florida State. There is something in the water. There is something in that culture that is breeding mediocrity at a level that Florida State has never dealt with. And let me take the step further. Not just breeding mediocrity, it's breeding entitlement. I am watching players. I'm watching the body language. I'm watching how they're acting during this game. And not just this game, all season. It has felt like an entitled kid who thought, I should be getting this win. We should be receiving this. We should be one of the best defensive lines in the country. Not a group that's hungry. That Florida State group from last year played like they were hungry. You knew Verse was hungry for something. You knew Fisk was hungry for something. You knew Lundy was hungry. Jordan Travis, Keon Goldman, Johnny Wilson, hunger out of that tight end as well, out of that backfield. This year it just appears to be, we showed up. We did our part. That's enough. And that is what is most disappointing about this Florida State team so far.
I co-sign on that. When we come back, we got to talk about your Wolfpack getting their first ACC win. I know our guy Lawrence Ross is big mad at Justin Wilcox right now because they keep dropping these close games, but NC State gets their first ACC win. Tremendous final drive by CJ Bailey, by the way. I think NC State has something there for the future. We got to talk about the Hokies. We got to talk about the new AP Top 25 rankings. My friends, we are only getting started. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. I already know you're keeping it locked to Z-Biotics. Guys, Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. We've all been there, right? Pre-alcohol makes an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and then you'll feel at your best tomorrow. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Guys, I'll be honest. I had a few last night, and I'm enjoying today. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on that day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout for 15% off. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton and Grayson have a victorious edition of Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes as well. We talk about all the Miami wins, all the controversy, Cam Ward, the lack of defense, all that good stuff. We're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, Kenton, let's talk about the Wolfpack. Come from behind victory against Cal, including a great final drive. We've seen the freshman mistakes, but, you thrust CJ Bailey into a difficult spot in these past few games. We're starting to see the development. We're starting to see the progress.
First of all, I want everybody to know I did not demand that Dono put this on the rundown. I did not say, hey, Mr. Dono, this needs to be the opening of our second block here. No, with that in mind, you're damn right we got something for the future. I love it. I told people after the Wake Forest game, because people were really upset, he threw a really bad interception on the first play. Yeah. And it wasn't about him making a bad read. It was just very inaccurate. And I said, hey, listen, there's a reason that I say if you're going to lose with the young guys, lose with the freshmen, instead of saying, hey, if you're losing with the old guys, put whoever gives you the best chance to win in. Because it's not about that game. It's not about that moment. When you put in a true freshman, you are looking toward the future because that guy has at minimum, 2 more years worth of games that he has to be in college football. That's just a requirement. That's just how it works out. And oftentimes we see guys grow from those moments to become something better much sooner than a full year and some change. And we saw that with CJ Bailey here because you talk about the last drive, but all game long, okay, he made, according to, I believe it's PFF, 6 big-time throws. 6 in this one game. He had 4 in all of his games leading up to this one.
Wow.
Only 2 turnover-worthy plays all game. That is what I'm talking about in terms of that young man that's growing up in front of our eyes. And also, Robert and I, the offensive coordinator from NC State, finally throwing it to Justin Jolie when you're before 4th down. What a novel idea. You throw it to one of your best pass catchers early in downs, and it works out well, Dono. Who could have thought? Maybe we need to bring in Miami's offensive coordinator because he doesn't wait till 4th down to target Xavier Restrepo. He doesn't do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, Oh, Cam's so good. Oh, Fletcher's so good. Martinez is so good. We'll save X till fourth down. So all in all, great win by the Wolfpack. But also, Cal, what a damn calamity. All you had to do was hit a 28-yarder, get right, church, and let's go home. And why, right? Whoo-wee. Lawrence, my heart goes out to you. I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this. And I know you're listening. We love you, brother, but
we love Lawrence.
It's so sad to see you down bad like this. If Wilcox got to go, he got to go. But man, thank you for the dub. I think we need to make a trophy of this thing. Make the whole pack of Bears.
We can both thank him for the dub.
There you go, a whole pack of Bears rivalry trophy. Let's get it done.
Well, Lawrence, whatever is your drink of choice, we'll send you a case because I think Kenton and I, we both owe you one. So we appreciate that. Virginia Tech on Thursday night, and Kenton, that was such an important game for both Boston College and the Hokies, 1-1 in conference, each of them heading into that game. Like that was an opportunity to stay in the ACC championship race and allow yourself to dream, because we do have, multiple teams, Miami, Clemson, who got a big win against Virginia, SMU, and Pitt, who are still unbeaten in conference. So, one loss doesn't guarantee anything, but two losses basically eliminates you from contention. So not only did Virginia Tech win, I think Bhayshul Tuten is still running for touchdowns. A 4-touchdown total day for the Hokies star running back. 18 carries for 266 yards. So the Hokies now, they're 4-3 overall, but 2-1 in the conference. So they can still dream, and they look so much better than they did to start the year.
Yeah, and I want to also point to something here in terms of Bhayshul Tuten and what he did in this game, right? 15 yards per carry. 15 yards per carry. Do you know how insane that is when you really break that down? Every time he touches the ball, a first down and a half is in essence what he was putting up there. And I know some people are going to say, well, you're just looking at some really big plays there, and that's how that happened. And you take away a couple of big plays, you take away the 83-yarder, and all of a sudden it doesn't look that good. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Because even if you take away that, you still got another 20-plus yard touchdown through the air in terms of what he did there. So you're looking at a situation where Boston College's defense looked completely overwhelmed. I mean, there was an onslaught of Tuten to the point where they were just they were in a state of disarray in essence in terms of, hey, how do we tackle this guy when he gets past the line of scrimmage? The answer is you don't. You let the goal line tackle. You let the goal line have that because we just can't do it on this day. But I mean, boy, he showed the hell out. Don't get me wrong. The offensive line did their thing, and he did his thing in terms of running hard and breaking tackles. But Boston College, y'all do realize this was not a game of two-hand touch. This is, in fact, still tackle football. You've got to be physical, get your nose in there, get a guy on the damn ground, and also take a decent angle. You play at Boston College, you know you're probably not going to be the fastest guy on the field. Take a good angle, buddy. What are we doing here?
All right, let's take a look at the new AP rankings. Because there's a couple things. It's a couple of things I don't love here. All right. All right. So hold on. Let me pull this up. For those who are watching us on video, we're sharing the screen right now. For those listening, we'll describe it. No complaints. Good for Oregon. Oregon moves into number 1 because the previous number 1 Texas Longhorns got themselves beat by Georgia. Georgia moves up to number 2 after that big win. Georgia 6-1. Penn State at number 3 at 6-0. Ohio State 5-1 at number 4. Texas drops down to number 5 at 6-1. Now, Miami at 7-0. I know that they've had some very close wins, but it's like if you're in the SEC, if you lose a game, and one of my listeners gave me this line, if you lose a game in the SEC, they treat it like a bye week. Or ACC, in the ACC, they scrutinize your victories more than they scrutinize SEC losses. Miami at number 6, but I wasn't expecting Miami to move up unless Georgia lost. I think if Georgia, who was at number 5, if they had lost to Texas, maybe Miami would have slid in to number 5. That's not my big complaint here. My big complaint is we move down the list. Tennessee at 7, LSU at 8. Clemson deservedly moves up a spot to number 9. They deserve to be in the top 10. Maybe they probably deserve to be even higher than they are. Iowa State, it is another one. Iowa State's not in the ACC, but they win a game against UCF and they get penalized by dropping a spot. That's how it goes when you're not in the SEC, I guess. BYU 11, Notre Dame 12, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama at 5-2, Kansas State, Boise State, Ole Miss 5-2, and then you've got Pitt at 6-0. And this is my bone to pick, Kenton, that the Pittsburgh Panthers, all they've done is beat all of the teams in front of them. I'm happy they're in the top 20. They deserve to be. There's two lost teams. Multiple 2-loss teams are in front of them in the rankings. That listener of mine was right. You lose in the SEC, they treat it like a bye week.
Absolutely. Not only is it the SEC, but it's about brands, which is what I was talking about on the squad last week when everybody was saying, well, Kenton, if these two teams played right now, who would be favored about how? I don't give a damn what Vegas got going on. With all due respect, I'm not a degenerate. I'm joking. If you're a bettor, you're not a degenerate. You're not a bad person, but you get my point.
I take it as a compliment when you say that, actually.
Well, say less. My favorite degenerate, Alex Donald, understands me. So with that in mind, I don't give a damn who you think will win or what you think would happen. You're looking at two teams. I can understand saying, hey, this team's in the FCS or this team is group of 5. They may not play the same types of teams. But at what point do the games matter? At what point and for whom? Because if that's the case, being a 2-loss team in the SEC is okay and it puts you in that stratosphere. Why is Vanderbilt just barely clinging on to the top 25? Didn't they beat one of those 2-loss teams? So why are we doing this thing where it's about brands instead of, hey, this is what I saw. This is what this team has put on film, because Bama has put a bunch of bad habits on film. We have seen a plethora of bad habits on film. We have seen an inability to do to get any type of surge or push through the middle of that offensive line multiple times on film. We have seen a reliance on chunk plays. They're the damn New York Yankees of college football. If they can't hit the long ball, if it doesn't lead a yard, congratulations, you probably got to win. So I don't understand it. I don't get how Eli Holstein and this company are not getting more respect, because, again, all they've done is win. All they've done is win football games.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, when we come back, there was a seismic change in ACC basketball. The timing was wild, but we're going to find out exactly why Virginia's Tony Bennett decided to step away and retire, because our pal Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Tar Heels is going to join us next. You guys want to keep it locked right here, because we are only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, Game Time. It's the only ticket app that Kenton and I use, because you're getting the best deals. And it's actually, I have this fun game on Game Time. I think a lot of you guys do this, where I wait a little longer. Like, hey, I see this ticket is $40 today. It might be $33 tomorrow. In fact, I've already watched the prices of Miami and Florida State this coming weekend, and in my area at Hard Rock Stadium, I was looking at $108 tickets last week. Now I'm looking at tickets starting at $98 for this coming Saturday. So you guys want to check out the Game Time app, and it's not just the awesome prices, it's the awesome features. Like Game Time Picks is a new feature that makes getting tickets to see your favorite live event even easier, because Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, the all-in pricing feature is a game changer, because don't you hate on the other ticket sites where it's like, oh, I think I'm buying $60 worth of tickets, and oh, here's all the fees. You can see the total up front at Game Time without hidden fees getting tacked on at the end. That really is a game changer as well. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, and we're giving you $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. It is always game time when our guy Isaac Shade joins us. Let's bring in that beautiful hair that is Isaac Shade. All right, so Isaac, viral late last week. I think it was last Thursday afternoon when we found out national championship winner, multi-time coach of the year, ACC coach of the year, national coach of the year, Tony Bennett was stepping away. And we've gotten some clarity on that, Isaac. So why was it ultimately that 20 days before his season started, Tony Bennett decides to retire?
Because he's not the man to do it anymore, and he doesn't like the way NIL and the transfer portal and everything else is shaping up. The other coaches that have done it recently have done it in a better time frame to help their programs. But the reason he does it in this time frame is the same reason that, say, Dean Smith did it back in the late 90s, because specifically he wanted one of his assistants to take over as head coach. And I mean, like, it wasn't like some veiled thing. Very specifically said, let me find the quote. "I've always wanted this to be taken over by one of my staff members." And that's exactly what's going to happen, at least for this year.
I think that that's such an interesting thing, because on the outside looking in, if you don't know that quote, it looks like he's leaving his team in the lurch, which is something that I very much so. I'm not, I didn't have the inside information there to UVA, so it looked like that. But let me ask you, Isaac, in your personal opinion, is this the best way that he could have gone about it for that situation to come into fruition? Because in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this is not something that's fact-based, pure speculation, I think he's built up enough equity to say, hey, this is my successor. I'm going to step away immediately after the season, and UVA would do right by him to honor that and say, you know what, this guy may have a short leash. We're going to give him a raise, maybe not a raise that's on pace with what you were making or what other ACC coaches are making. We'll give him the latitude, give him a couple years to prove himself. I'm
right with you, Kent, on that. Like, ultimately, the equity is built up for him, and it doesn't have to be in the same way. Like, it doesn't have to be Mike Krzyzewski taking a year to bring him in. But I think this could have been handled better, both to give Coach Ron Sanchez, who is the new head coach, at least interim, and the players more time to wrap their brains around it and figure out what they're going to do. Now, I will say this, though. I think the big question we ask is, are they still going to proceed at a glacial pace to where Coach Keats for you, Kenton, or Coach Larinaga for you, Dono, or Coach Davis for me at Carolina are like, oh my goodness, we got to, deal with this slow pace, and we got to deal with all the pack line defense and the hard double on the post. Like, are we going to have to continue to deal with that? Let me tell you this. So Ron Sanchez, and this is on our emergency reaction show on Thursday, I predicted that Coach Sanchez would actually be named the new head coach. And here's why. Both he and the other associate head coach were Jason Williford, couldn't think of his name there for a second, have both been with Tony Bennett for a long time, over a decade at Virginia. But Coach Sanchez, from the 18-19 season through the 22-23 season, had been the head coach at Charlotte. And so he's got that experience that then makes sense to plug him in here. Here's what kind of leads me to believe that we're going to still see the glacial pace. That last year at Charlotte, they ranked 362nd in the nation in adjusted tempo. There were 363 teams in the Division I that year.
I didn't know there were that many teams.
Yeah, Dono. And Virginia, they were slower than Virginia. Virginia was 360th. Oh, wow. So Ron Sanchez played 2 slots slower than Tony Bennett did. So I think we're going to still see the yawning pace, the Charlottesville crowd at John Paul Jones triumphing every shot clock violation known to man.
So let me ask you this, because Tony Bennett, he steps away citing this new era of college athletics that a lot of people don't like. Some people do like it. It kind of depends on where you are, because certain programs thrive in this new environment if they have, great NIL collectives behind them. So what, because you would know certainly better than me. It has the situation in Virginia, have they been behind in that stuff? Like, is this a case where Tony Bennett just didn't like it regardless, or is Virginia lagging behind a lot of other programs in that regard?
It's a great question, Dono. As to if they actually are lacking behind, there's nothing, or lagging behind, excuse me, there's nothing that has come out now or prior to suggest that. I think this is more just about Tony Bennett realizing that it's not what he signed up for and not what he wanted to be a part of. Like one of the other quotes from his press conference, I looked at myself and I realized I'm no longer the best coach to lead this program, hear this phrase, in this current environment. And if you're going to do it, you got to be all in. And if you do it half-hearted, it's not fair to the university or these young men. And so, we do have coaches and programs who are like, cool, I'll get on board. I'll lean into this. I'll do it. You've got other coaches who are getting into the head coaching profession and signing up for this. Tony Bennett is caught in between those where he's like, this isn't what I signed up for, and it's just not me, so I'm out. Now, the problem in his press conference is I kind of wish he had stopped there and just put it solely on himself, but then he put it back on the landscape. And I wish he hadn't done that, but I know he was emotional and he's dealing with it, and I get it. But I think it's more about Bennett than Virginia's ability to do what they need to do to get the guys they need.
In terms of looking at, how storied of a program Virginia is and how the regular season success was always there, but the postseason success outside of one national championship run had eluded him to some extent. Do you kind of look at this and say, you know what, Virginia is set up in a situation to sustain the success that they had with Bennett there? Do you expect them to hit another level in terms of positively, or are you like, hey, lower your expectations if you're a fan of the Who's? If you had to give it a guess right now, what would you say?
What's interesting, Ken, I'm not very in on Virginia for this year. I think they'll be like, we got 18 basketball teams now. I think they're in that middle third, like 12 to 12, or what would that be? 7 to 12?
7 to 12, yeah.
Yeah. I think they were going to be in that range this year. What's interesting is they're set up with multiple, like in baseball, in Major League, when you sign somebody, you want some contract control where you got them for a couple years. A bunch of the guys that Virginia has just brought in are in that vein. And so if Coach Sanchez can keep that going, there is some continuity and some pop, but none of them are guys I see like a Kyle Guy or a DeAndre Hunter or a Ty Jerome that just had them rolling. Even undersized Kihei Clark that was there for 3.5 decades, I think it was. That
he was Armando Bacot of UVA.
That's right. So I think for right now, I am not expecting them to be at the success they were like in the mid-teens into these early 20s. But I think they will hang around. I don't think they're going to the bottom tier of the ACC. But that's where I would have them right now. But man, the ACC as a whole, this is what I'm looking at, guys, going beyond the Virginia of it, if that's okay, to the ACC as a whole.
Sure.
We had 4 national championship winning coaches in our conference 4 years ago. We've lost one of them each successive year. 2021-22, Roy Williams is out. Hubert Davis is in at North Carolina. 22-23, Mike Krzyzewski's out. John Shire's in at Duke. Last year, Jim Boeheim's out. In comes Red Autry at Syracuse. And now Tony Bennett's out and Ron Sanchez is in. That means, per Brian Ives, who tweeted this, for the first time since the start of the 81-82 season, there is no head coach in the ACC that has a national championship to his name.
Wow. Wow. Well, this is tremendous stuff and tremendous insight here. And he's Isaac Shade. And like Kenton and I, he's a two-show man. You could see him and hear him on Locked On College Basketball, also on Locked On Tar Heels. Isaac, thank you so much for the info. And I cannot wait. We'll be seeing a lot more of you when hoop season begins. You know that.
Let's do it, boys. I'm so ready. Hey, real quick, one other thing. Nationally, only 6 active national championship head coaches. Now, I know it's 3 in football.
Oh.
We got one of them in our conference, but now in basketball, we're down to 6 as well. So those numbers are dwindling. It's going to be a conversation that continues.
No doubt. Well, great stuff. And we'll continue our conversations tomorrow here on Locked On ACC. We'll have the squad coming up later on this week. He's Isaac Shade. He is Kenton Gibbs. I am Alex Dono, and we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.